Hope everyone had a happy Valentine's weekend. That was the message Mark posted, simple and warm, the kind of caption that floats easily across timelines and disappears into the scroll. But behind those words was a stretch of sunlit shoreline, a sweep of turquoise water, and a weekend in Miami that felt like it had been painted in saturated color, bold, unapologetic, and alive. They arrived just as the northern chill was tightening its grip back home. Miami greeted them differently. The air itself seemed flirtatious, brushing against their skin with a soft warmth that felt like a whispered promise. Even at the airport, there was a shift in energy. People moved slower, smiled longer, dressed brighter. February here didn't mean gray skies and heavy coats. It meant linen shirts, oversized sunglasses, and the gentle percussion of waves somewhere nearby. By the time they reached South Beach, the late afternoon sun had turned everything into gold. The Art Deco buildings stood like pastel sentinels along Ocean Drive, mint, blush, lemon, sky blue, each one glowing under the angled light. Palm trees swayed lazily, as if keeping time with some invisible rhythm that pulsed through the city. Valentine's weekend in Miami felt different from anywhere else. It wasn't just about candlelit dinners and roses. It was about contrast, the fiery sunsets melting into cool ocean nights, the buzz of nightlife blending with the hush of early morning tides. Love here wasn't quiet, it shimmered. Mark and his partner walked along the beach barefoot, shoes in hand, letting the Atlantic curl around their ankles. The sand was powdery and warm from the day's sun, sifting between their toes. Around them, couples sprawled on striped towels, friends clinked plastic cups in celebration, and a distant radio played salsa that seemed to float effortlessly across the breeze. Lucky to be in Miami, he'd written. Lucky, yes, but it felt like more than luck. It felt intentional, like choosing warmth over cold, color over gray, presence over routine. As the sun began its descent, the sky transformed into a masterpiece. Orange bled into pink, pink into violet. The water mirrored it all, fractured by gentle waves. They stood together watching that slow, cinematic fade, the kind of moment that doesn't need filters or captions, just breath, just being there. That evening, South Beach came alive in a different way. Neon signs flickered on, humming in electric blues and hot pinks. Restaurants spilled onto sidewalks, tables glowing with candlelight. Laughter rose in bright bursts. The scent of grilled seafood and citrus drifted through the air. They chose a small outdoor table where they could people watch and feel the night unfolding around them. Valentine's dinners can sometimes feel scripted, prefix menus, rehearsed romance, but here, there was spontaneity. A street musician strummed a guitar nearby, his voice gravelly and rich. A couple at the next table toasted loudly, their glasses chiming like tiny bells. Somewhere down the block, someone cheered. Love in Miami didn't whisper, it danced. Mark reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. No cameras, no production crews, just the simple electricity of touch, the kind that says, I'm here. The next morning arrived gently. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, painting soft patterns across the room. The city wasn't quiet, exactly, but it felt slower, like it, too, was savoring the afterglow of the holiday. They grabbed coffee from a nearby cafe and wandered back toward the beach. Early risers jogged along the shoreline, their footprints temporary signatures in the sand. A yoga class gathered in a loose circle, palms pressed together, breathing in the ocean air. Seagulls wheeled overhead, unapologetic and loud. There is something about South Beach in the morning that feels honest. Without the neon and music, the place reveals its softer edges. The water looks clearer, the horizon stretches wider, conversations become quieter, more thoughtful. They sat side by side, coffee cups warming their hands, watching the waves fold and unfold. It wasn't about grand gestures, it was about this shared silence, shared space, shared warmth. Later, they rented bikes and cruised along the boardwalk. The wooden planks rattled softly beneath the tires. Families posed for photos. Skaters zigzagged past. The breeze carried a hint of salt and sunscreen. Mark laughed as they raced for a few playful seconds, the kind of spontaneous competition that ends in breathless grins. Everywhere they looked, there were reminders of connection. A proposal happening discreetly near the dunes. A grandmother teaching her granddaughter how to dip her toes into the surf without fear. Two friends sprawled on the sand, deep in conversation. Valentine's weekend isn't only about romantic love. It's about all the threads that tie us together, the shared meals, the shared jokes, the shared journeys. Miami seemed to amplify that idea. The city itself felt like a mosaic of stories layered on top of one another. By Sunday afternoon, the weather was at its peak perfection: bright sun, low humidity, a sky so blue it almost looked unreal. They found themselves drawn back to the water again, as if the ocean had something left to say. They waded in deeper this time, letting the cool rush surround them. Waves lifted and dropped them gently, an effortless rhythm. There's something humbling about the ocean. It reminds you how small you are, how fleeting moments can be. And yet, standing there together, the moment felt expansive, infinite. Sending love. He'd ended his post. The phrase seemed simple, almost casual, but as they stood waist deep in shimmering water, it carried weight. Sending love meant choosing to radiate something outward, to let warmth extend beyond the boundaries of a single weekend. As the sun began to dip once more, they lingered on the sand, reluctant to let the day close. A group nearby built a bonfire as permitted, the flames flickering against the darkening sky. Music played softly from a portable speaker. Strangers became temporary companions, drawn together by shared heat and shared night. They talked about the year ahead, plans, dreams, uncertainties. Miami had offered them a pause, a bright comma in the middle of busy lives, a reminder that sometimes you have to step into sunlight to remember what warmth feels like. The weekend wasn't extravagant in the traditional sense. There were no grand stages or dramatic declarations, just ocean, sky, laughter, touch, just the kind of presence that often gets lost in routine. On their final morning, they woke before dawn to watch the sunrise. The beach was nearly empty. The horizon glowed faintly, a thin line of silver that slowly widened into molten gold. The first sliver of sun broke free, casting a path of light across the water straight toward them. It felt symbolic, like the city was offering one last gift. They stood hand in hand, the early light painting their faces in warmth. In that quiet, the world felt both vast and intimate. The weekend had been about more than escaping cold weather. It had been about reconnecting to each other, to joy, to the simple luxury of time. As they packed later that morning, sandy shoes tucked into suitcases and sunglasses carefully wrapped, there was a shared understanding that the glow of Miami would travel home with them, not in the form of souvenirs, but in memory: the texture of sand underfoot, the taste of salt on lips, the echo of laughter against neon-lit streets. Hope everyone had a happy Valentine's weekend.